Hi green lovers, I'm out on an unusually cool end of May day in my Northern California Zone 9B garden, and it is time for the May garden tour. So let's see what's going on. So first off, I wanted to show you this raised garden bed, this elevated raised garden bed. I posted a video about this, a detailed review on this a week ago. So go out and check that if you want to know more about this. But I just want to show you what's going on because so much has happened even over the last 1 week. So I went away for 6 days to Boston and came back, and it looks like the plants have literally doubled in size. These two plants over here are dwarf tomatoes, and they were just about this tall, I would say. Look at them now, and so green and beautiful. This little dwarf tomato, semi-micro tomato, I would say, is a tiny Tim, and it is just loaded with blossoms. And right next to it, a true micro tomato, the orange hat. Now look at this, guys. Isn't that just adorable? This plant grows to about 6 or 8 inches tall, and it produces these tomatoes really early. So if you're looking to get an early fix on ripe tomatoes in your garden, plant some micro tomatoes because they do tend to produce earlier. Now this here is needing a little topping here. This is a jalapeno, Jedi jalapeno. First time I'm growing this. This is a hybrid variety from Johnny Seeds, and it is supposed to be a very large jalapeno. So let's see how it does, but I think it needs a little bit of a topping. Don't you guys think so? But some other things that I've got growing here: one more jalapeno plant, some cilantro, some basil, some oregano, and I am hoping that this will be my hop outside the kitchen, grab something kind of garden for a pizza, maybe for a salsa. So that's what I put it over here for. Let's see how it does. But overall, I'm just loving the fact that this system is acting almost like a hydroponic system because it's got a self-watering feature. It's got a 6-gallon tank under it. You see over here, this little bobber over here shows that there is water, and if I put a little bit of fertilizer in it, then the plants reach out over there and get nutrients, and that's why I think they're growing so beautifully. I walk down here, I still have some tomato plants and pepper plants that have not yet gone in the ground, and the way that I keep them happy, you know, in their little teeny tiny containers is I put some water in here, about an inch of water with some liquid fertilizer, and that seems to keep them going and growing really well. But I gotta get these in the ground. Green stalks are transitioning seasons. I've got these lovely nasturtiums that brought me so much joy, but as you can see, starting to look a little bit raggedy. I'm trying to milk the beauty of this as long as I possibly can, so I'm leaving them in here. I've got some lovely pansies. I love these Johnny jump ups. I'm going to grow them every year. And then in this green stalk, the main attraction is this parsley that I grew from seed. I'm so thrilled at how beautifully it's growing. It took a very long time, I have to admit, to get it going. So I probably won't try this again. I'll just get some plants and get them started that way. But now that they've taken off, they're just growing beautifully. I've got a little scarlet runner bean. It's a container variety. So first time I'm growing this. Look how pretty that is. And of course, my mighty Egyptian walking onion is really owning whatever pocket I put it in, so I am not going to be planting Egyptian walking onions in this green stalk ever again. And then moving on here, the strawberries, I've been harvesting them regularly. You don't see any on here because I just came out here yesterday and harvested a whole bunch here. You can see a few here, and they are replenishing themselves. You can see a lot more coming. So really delicious strawberries, and they grow really well in the green stalk. And then at the bottom here, I'm starting to put in some of my warmer weather plants. I've got a little eggplant. I actually stuck some bean seeds in here. And yeah, so thyme. I've got some, again, orange hat tomatoes in a lot of pockets. So yeah, lots of new things coming in the pockets that are being replaced because I'm yanking out these cool weather crops. Now this one I cut down to the base. This was some sort of broccoli or kale, and it's regrowing, guys. So it wants to give me beautiful leaves, and I am not complaining. I don't have anything else at this point to put in here, so maybe I'll just let that grow and use that for leaves. Another cool season crop that I gotta get out is this lovely graffiti cauliflower. So that's gotta go. I've got a red acre cabbage over here. Looks so pretty. I just don't have the heart to pull it out, but yeah, it's past its prime. Got some lettuce growing here and there. Also, that's not looking as great anymore. I've got some sweet peas, container sweet peas, and I've got some peppers that are poking through this. So I'm just kind of letting my green stalks do that thing this year. When I find a pocket that's empty, I stick something in it. I'm not looking to make it super perfect and organized, but I still think they look gorgeous. My greenhouse is also in a transition state. A lot of the plants that I have been growing from seedlings, I still have several in here, but most of them need to go out in the garden. So I'm thinking that I am going to be setting up maybe a succulent garden. Someone recommended that in one of the comments, and I think that's a really good idea because succulents don't do so great in our hot California summers. So I'm thinking maybe I'll clean this up a little bit, rearrange it, and make a succulent garden, which will hopefully look pretty and protect them from that intense heat of the summer sun. If you're wondering what these beautiful leaves are here, this is coleus, guys, one of my favorite shade plants. So I'll have to find a great shady spot, and I've got plenty in my garden to put these gorgeous plants. And I'm going to try and overwinter them this year because they are a little bit of a hassle to grow from seeds, I'll admit it. But they do overwinter and they make great house plants. I'm going to do that this year. And for those of you that have been following my lavender from cuttings, this is that second batch that needed a little bit more time, and obviously now they've taken off, and I'm going to transplant them into bigger pots and keep them nourished through the year so that I can plant them out in my garden next year. I just wanted to give a spin around of my garden gone crazy wild. Now, as you guys know, we are redoing my backyard, and we're still very much in the progress of working on it. So I've not done very much with this garden. I've just kind of let whatever wanted to volunteer do so, and they're not disappointing. The sweet peas are going crazy. I've got some beautiful geraniums there, and I'm soon going to have that beautiful bush of Shasta daisies. So yeah, this is my crazy mess, and I love it. Hopefully someday I'll have it nice and organized. I want to show you this, guys. I've got these set up here and there. They don't look very pretty right now, and I'm not too worried, but this is a compost bin, and this is what I use to stick any garden cleanup that I'm doing. Leaves, etc., go in over there, and it makes compost for me. The worms break it down over time, and it keeps that area kind of nice and moist. So I'm sure that the plants around it are going to be getting some nice nutrients and grow really well. I've got a zucchini plant that I stuck in here, so let's see how that does. And a wild sunflower. I got these wild sunflowers from the wayside one day, and I planted them last year. They were beautiful. This year they seem to be a little bit late to blossom because we've been having unusually cool weather, but I'm sure that by the next time I show you a video of the spot, this sunflower plant is going to be full of blossoms. So this is the new addition since the last time I did a garden tour. This is a deck that we put in this corner of the house. So yeah, every month we're adding just a little bit more, and this was quite a bit of work, but it was a lot of fun doing this with my husband. So moving on to the north garden, this is my garlic bed. Now, I am not sure what's going on here, folks. I've got two varieties of garlic. This is called California Late, something like that. And that one is music garlic. Now, one would think that this is ready to harvest because, you know, it's starting to yellow quite a bit. But I pulled one up the other day, and I just don't have a decent sized bulb. Now, the only thing that I can think of is that this is a hardneck variety, not really intended for my Northern California climate. And I also got a lot of scapes out of these. I might have let the scapes go too far along, and that took the energy away from the bulbs. But if you can suggest what might be wrong here, I've never grown hardneck varieties before. Is that what the problem is? Is there something that I need to do differently for hardneck versus softneck? And these are supposedly softneck garlic, at least I thought they were, but yesterday I discovered a whole bunch of garlic scapes on these as well. So now I'm worried that I got two types of hardneck varieties, and I don't know what my garlic harvest is going to look like this year. Spinning around here, my peas, it's end of season. So I got quite a lot of peas. I'm happy about it. I enjoyed them in spite of the fact that the rats nibbled away the tops. I was disappointed, but it looks like they're producing quite a bit, and I'm letting these go to seed. So the last batch I usually let go to seed. I'm going to pull these out, and I've actually got some stuff waiting in the wings. Once I pull out my peas, these are hyacinth beans, pole beans, a beautiful purple bean. So I'm going to be putting those in. And I've got a variety of other little odds and ends growing here. I can't do very much in these beds, frankly, because I get just a lot of squirrel activity here. They run along that fence and they just grab whatever I put in here. And I've got some rats as well. So I just try a few things, and whatever works, kind of like my peas. And I've got some rampicant squash. The Strombochino squash grew so well for me last year, so I'm trying it again. I've got some bitter melon here, and rats don't seem to like it, and squirrels neither, and my husband doesn't either. I am the only one that likes it, but I love the plant too. The leaves are just so pretty. So I'm planting that over here with the hope that no critter gets it. I've got a dwarf tomato here as well. Lots of flowers on my tomato plants. Another orange hat that's not looking that healthy. Leaves are looking yellow. I've got to give it a boost of nitrogen, but it is forming fruit. And the sage is so gorgeous. My onions too didn't do as great. They were looking wonderful for a long time, and then now they're starting to drop. They're not very large. So this one, as an example, once the top falls over, it means it's ready to harvest. But, you know, 1.5 inches in diameter. Now, these are not very large size onions to begin with, but I was hoping for some larger bulbs than what I'm getting here. So, again, trying new varieties, seeing how they do. Moving along here to my Olympic beds, I have got my zucchini in the ground, and they are actually starting to flower. Again, the weather has been unseasonably cool. At this time, I should have had some zucchinis going. I put them in really late as well. But the male blossoms have started, which means the females are not too far behind. A couple of other things that I wanted to show you now. I planted these in early spring, artichokes. And in my lovely Mediterranean climate, hot and dry, in summer and mild winters, these do thrive. And so this year it doesn't seem like the gophers got them. I did plant these a couple of years ago, and every plant got eaten, but every one of them this year is starting to produce a little bulb, a little globe. So I'm happy, but my first year production, I am not going to harvest these. I'm going to let the birds have. These do thrive. And so this year it doesn't seem like the gophers got them. I did plant these a couple of years ago, and every plant got eaten, but every one of them this year is starting to produce a little globe. So I'm happy, but my first year production, I am not going to harvest these. I'm going to let the birds have them this year. But yeah, look how cute that is. Heading back in, I wanted to show you my grape arbor. It's full of leaves and also full of blossoms. So right there, you can see right here. Now, I made a mistake a couple of years ago, and I chopped this vine down drastically. Did not realize that flowers form on canes from last year. So I missed out a year or two of grapes, and now it looks like we're getting some again. Usually we get a ton of grapes, and again, it's mostly squirrel food. We enjoy the shade, and they're very sweet grapes, but they are seeded, and so they're a little bit difficult to eat. So we let the squirrels enjoy them. But we do have a couple of seedless varieties that I started from cutting last year, and they're going to be growing up this arbor here. So I've got that here, and I've got another one here, different variety. I'm going to get 2 more and put it on those corners as well. And hopefully we'll have a lovely grape-covered arbor in the middle of our backyard. Folks, I know that you've probably noticed that my garden is a weedy mess. And I've been busy last month, I've been traveling a lot, and I just haven't had enough time to spend in the garden. So I've kind of let it go. We've been doing the backyard remodel as well, and I'm focusing more on that and other things. And life happens, folks. But I hope you're enjoying my weedy garden, and if you are, please do give this video a thumbs up. Now let's take a look at some more that's going on. Okay, we're on the other side of the house, and I've got these 6 raised beds, 12 by 4 raised beds here. And the first stop is my fava beans. Now, these also were pretty much cut down by rats, but they managed to recover, and they're going gangbusters with all the beans that they're producing. You can see the nice large beans. Now, I am actually going to let these go to seed and save seeds this year. Fava beans are expensive. Just for one packet of about maybe 12 seeds or so, it's like $3-4. And I want to save a lot of seeds because I want to plant a lot of favas next year. Favas do a lot of good for your soil as well. Number one, they create a lot of biomass that you can put in your compost, but then underneath as well, they're nitrogen fixing plants. And so they actually add a lot of nutrients to the soil. I've got a comfrey plant growing here. Now, comfrey is a really good plant to have in your garden. It's what's called a dynamic accumulator, which means that it has roots that go really deep down, and it pulls nutrients, and it produces these large leaves that you can pull out and you can chop and drop over your garden and add nutrition from deep down onto the surface of your soil. So I've got about 5 or 6 of these, and I want to dig them up, actually divide them and make some more because I really like this plant. This is my potato bed. I think it's pretty much close to harvest time, folks. What do you say? A lot of damage by roly-polies and the like, but I think these are getting close to end and ready for harvest. And this was a batch that I planted right afterward, so I'll give them another couple of weeks or so. And I'm seeing a lot of ladybugs in the garden. That's a good thing. That means that my garden is starting to balance out. Ladybirds are wonderful because they help with aphids in particular, which torment a lot of plants in my garden. So I love ladybugs. I've seen a lot of larvae as well. That makes me very happy. And this is my pride and joy, my tomato bed. Now, I mentioned to you guys that I'm doing a new trellising mechanism this year. So I've got this galvanized wire that I've got hanging off of these posts, and they run across, and I am trying to single stem these tomatoes up some wire all the way to that. When they reach that point, I'm going to release some of the twine and then let it kind of lean. So I'm doing what's called the low and lean method. The biggest problem that I'm seeing so far with this method is that you've got to be on top of the suckers, which are those side shoots that come out from the armpits. Let me see if I can find any for you. Yeah, you can see one emerging over here. So I remove these as soon as I see them. The intent is to have one stem going up this, and then tomatoes tend to form with the flowers down below, producing the fruit first. Those ripen, you take them away, and then as the plant grows taller and taller, it produces more flowers and fruit, and they ripen in that order. So it kind of makes sense to do this method. But the biggest challenge that I'm having, like I said, is removing those suckers. I'm just not able to keep up. I blink and then I've got this sort of thing happening where now I don't even know which one is the leader. So I've got 2 leaders growing, and I decided to keep them both. So yeah, 1 to 2 leaders per plant is the idea. But as you can see, they are full of blossoms. All of them are producing lots and lots of blossoms. We have had really weird weather this year, so I am hoping that that is not going to affect my tomato production. And you can actually see one of the plants, this is an early girl, I believe, starting to form some fruit. So yeah, this is kind of the ideal of the single stem method. I've got 1 leader and I don't have any other side branches, not too terribly much foliage, so the plant can put all of the energy into the blossoms and thereafter the fruit. Passing by my single seed challenge. Now this plant is absolutely out of control. It is very different than any other tomato plant that I have grown. This is a Phil's One tomato, and you can see that even from the look of it, it produces leaves like kind of like a canopy, versus another tomato plant over here. They kind of grow tall, they produce suckers along the stem, and then they keep doing it that way. But this one, it produces suckers also like a canopy. I don't even know which one is the main branch anymore. It's just producing suckers everywhere. And so, this is my single seed challenge, and I do not want to mess too much with what it wants to do naturally. So I am going to let it do its thing. Let's see how it thrives. For the most part, I am loving the large number of blossoms that it is producing. I just want to do a quick stop and show you my asparagus as well. Now this is growing in the same bed as tomatoes. In fact, I've got some tomato plants growing in between, and I'm using the same trellising system, folks, to put my asparagus up. Usually I've got asparagus sort of just flopping over here and there, but this year I'm like, why not trellis the asparagus as well? And it seems like it's really enjoying that, and looks so gorgeous too. And look how large the asparagus is. Go down here. Now this is the typical width that you would see in a grocery store asparagus, but look at this. There's so many of these that are just so thick. So this is my third year. I actually harvested and enjoyed a lot of asparagus, probably a couple of dozen spears. But yeah, asparagus is one of those things that I recommend everyone tries to grow if your climate allows it, because it's the gift that just keeps giving and giving for the next 20 or 30 years. Quick thing that I wanted to show you guys. I've got these tiny teddy bear sunflowers that I planted here. They're not looking that great, but I planted them mainly because the seeds, I'm hoping, are a distraction to the rats and they leave some of my other plants alone. But one thing that I have read about sunflowers is that they are what's called allelopathic, which means that they produce toxins and the plants around them don't grow too well. Now, I don't know whether that's the case or not, but I am seeing a striking difference in the size of my tomato plants. Look at how tiny these are, this one and this one as well, compared to my other tomato plants that are at least double, if not triple the size, and looking much healthier as well. So I'm not sure whether there's anything to that. Do sunflowers really release toxins in the soil and affect the growth of the neighboring plants? What has been your experience? Do comment below. I would love to learn from people's actual practical experience, because the stuff that you read on the internet these days. Moving over to my planters. Now these are the experiment that I did. I'll put a link to the video where I planted a couple of these with the stems kind of horizontal and buried in the soil, and then a couple behind it I planted with the stems going all the way down and deep. So I planted them to roughly the same depth. I would say that the ones that I planted vertically were planted a little more shallow, if you will, so they were taller than the ones that were planted horizontally. But they are pretty identical in growth at this point. I do not know whether one method is better than the other. And they're both sets of plants producing flowers. They're looking so healthy. If at all this experiment tells me that I can actually plant stems horizontally, I would rather do that, because it's a pain to dig really, really deep holes to plant these things. I've also started getting my pepper plants in the ground. Now these two were overwintered, and you can see, compared to something that I planted that is struggling to grow because it's been subject to pest damage, etc., these are already thriving, and in fact I noticed that some of them were starting to produce buds as well. So if you want an early harvest, try overwintering your peppers. Now I can actually overwinter directly in the soil if I put some kind of dome over it. I've got a mild winter, and these actually overwinter fairly easily in the soil. But if you're in a cooler climate, you might want to bring them inside, and there are lots of videos on the internet on how to overwinter peppers. So try that method, because peppers, unlike popular belief, are not annuals. They're actually perennials if you give them the opportunity to be so. This is my sorrel, green leaf sorrel, that for the first time ever is going to seed, and it looks absolutely phenomenal. And this beautiful flower that the bees absolutely love is Scabiosa. Now, Scabiosa is a perennial flower and it grows well in my zone, and unfortunately it is taking up a lot of this planter. Now, these planters were intended for my tomatoes and peppers and other things, but some of these perennial flowers, I just don't have the heart to remove them, and they become quite hefty. Look at that. I'm sure it's pulling a lot of nutrients out of this planter, but I don't have the heart to pull it out because it's so pretty. Another perennial flower that I absolutely love is sweet alyssum. And I plant these in my planters as well, and I'm sure that they also are pulling a lot of nutrients, but I don't have the heart to remove them because the bees love them so much, and I do too. And they smell heavenly. They smell like honey. And sweet alyssum is one of those, just a word of caution. Once you have them, you will have them every year because they reseed so easily. Number one, they're a perennial, a tender perennial, so you can just chop it back and it'll keep regrowing, but it also reseeds so easily. In fact, let me show you them growing in the concrete here and flowering nicely as well in the cracks. So yeah, these hardy little plants are lovely to grow, and I dig these out and I transplant them, and they grow nicely wherever I put them. Got a couple of citrus plants here. Now, this is a Meyer Lemon. It's about 3 years old, and last year for the first time I actually got 4 large fruit out of this, and this year it seems to have a lot of blossoms. These blossoms are so scented. It's a heady scent. It's wonderful, and I've got a lot of blossoms growing. Now, these are very hungry plants, and I have not been doing a very good job keeping them well fertilized. So I'm going to have to add some fertilizer to that. I've got some, I'm not sure whether the yellowing of the leaves is it complaining to me that it is not getting enough nutrients. But yeah, if I don't fertilize these, the blossoms will all start to drop and I won't get fruit. I've got a lime, a key lime over here as well, and this also produced a ton of blossoms. Now, most of the blossoms will drop off, so don't get too excited if you see a lot of blossoms on your young lime trees or lemon trees or any citrus trees. The plant will only support the number of fruits that it can, and it needs a certain number of leaves in order to support a good fruit production. So smaller plants will not produce a lot of fruit. Walking along this side, these folks are my Egyptian walking onions. Actually, let me show you this one. These are in full bloom, post bloom actually, and let me show you what they look like from up close. So you can see here these tiny little onion-like structures. These are actually tiny onions, and some of them have actually started growing. So what this plant does, and why it's called an Egyptian walking onion, I don't know about the Egyptian part, but the walking part, let me show you this example here. These have all started to fall over because guess what they're trying to do, folks? Sorry about the weeds again, but they are trying to reach down and put some new plants in the ground here. So wherever this touches the soil, if the conditions are right, they will produce new onion plants. So that's why they're called Egyptian walking onions. Now, many people have asked me, are they invasive? I would say that if you let them do their thing, they can go all over the place if your garden allows them to. But they're also pretty easy to just yank out. So if you don't want them in a certain place, like for example over here, I think this is too much. Plus, again, they've taken over this entire planter. So invasive, yeah, because they're not letting me plant anything else here. They've taken over. They're owning this bed, just like they're doing with my green stock. So I'm going to pull out this entire clump. They've got lovely onions at the bottom. They're kind of small onions, but they are tasty. A little bit on the acrid side, so not very sweet, more kind of spicy onions, if you will, but very tasty nonetheless. So you can enjoy even these little ones if you like. They're kind of a pain to peel, but I usually use them to replant these clumps in other parts of the garden where I want more Egyptian walking onions, and of course I share with friends. My green beans are producing flowers, and I'm hoping to get some beans pretty soon. So I've already started a new succession of green beans, and you want to succession plant your green beans because these will produce a harvest, especially the bush varieties. They just produce a harvest and then they're done. And so every month or so, get a new bunch of these going and you'll have beans all summer long. This is my newest planter that I put in this year, and I've got some lettuce that I'm leaving for the rats. As you can see, they have eaten them well because they're eating these. They're leaving some of my other plants alone. They actually like my chamomile plants, but now that I've got them growing to this size, they're not bothering the chamomile anymore, but the lettuce is definitely fair game for them. Got some eggplants started over here, and these are all volunteers. This is, I think, cantaloupe. I threw some compost in here, buried it, and it has produced a whole bunch of plants for me that seem to be doing really well. So I'm just gonna let them do that thing and see what I get out of it, if any, if the squirrels let me. More Egyptian walking onions. Yes, I've got a lot. I've got to empty out these totes and put them somewhere else. This is my dragon fruit. I came out yesterday and pruned off a ton of these growth. It was growing everywhere, and you want to really focus the growth on the ends. So I leave a couple at the end of each of these sections, and those eventually produce this really nice canopy. Now this is only one plant. I can actually plant up to 4. I've actually got a few more going here, but this is very new for me, growing dragon fruit. I was hoping to get some fruit this year. I'm not seeing any yet. I'm a little disappointed that I'm not seeing any flowers, but I still have my fingers crossed. So any tips that you guys can share with me on how to get my dragon fruit to produce blossoms and fruit, I would really appreciate. Moving on to my blueberries, you can see that they're growing very, very well. Now I've made a few videos on what I did to get these to start to flourish. I will leave a link to that at the end of this video, but they're doing really well. Now one thing that I do every year, and I promised that I'd never do it the next year, but I still do it, is I plant other things in these whiskey barrels, because you know what? A tiny blueberry plant, I'm like, hey, it can share the space, right? It's just a little straw flower, and it was only this big when I planted it, and now look at it. Yeah, I love straw flowers, but they are definitely eating into the nutrients that the blueberries should be getting. And blueberries are very shallow rooted, so their feeder roots are all on the surface. So I gotta come and give this a dose of fertilizer. And no, I can't pull this out. I've got a couple more plants over here that I got that were much more mature, and they are actually producing berries, and I am actually enjoying the berries. I've harvested a few. I'm sure the birds have been getting a few, but if you're getting blueberry plants, get plants that are older. They're more expensive, but they will definitely produce for you a lot sooner. This here is my pink lemonade blueberry plant that I got as a very tiny plant. And so I got nothing last year, and this year it seems to be growing, but I'll probably start getting fruit only next year. So yeah, it's worth the investment if you want fruit sooner to get a larger blueberry plant. Sweet peas gone wild. These are all volunteer sweet peas, but I wanted to show you my fig. Now this was a tiny 6-inch cutting last year, and it is producing. This is a brown turkey fig. Look at those large figs that it's producing. So yeah, these are Brabas, so it's like the first crop, and I think what I've read is that brown turkey figs only produce Brabas if you don't have that fig wasp to pollinate the second crop. So this is all I'll get this year from this plant, and I'm happy about it because it's such a young plant. I wasn't expecting anything. This is an Italian honey fig. It produced a little tiny fig, and I just removed that because it didn't seem like the fig was growing. And again, this is one of those things where I've planted other things that are growing really well. These are calendulas, and these I'm not too worried about because when the weather starts to warm up a little, calendulas don't like it. They will die off. So this fig will have the entire pot back to itself. But this is not open yet. Look how pretty that color is. This is called Zoolights Calendula. This is your typical calendula. Most calendulas are this color, but you can get some other pretty interesting colors, and I'll see if I can get a photograph for you later in the day when this opens up. My crazy sweet peas. I know they say you're supposed to harvest these things so that you get more blooms, but I don't need more blooms. I've got a ton of blooms. So what I do instead is I just come around and remove these pods whenever I see them. and hopefully that will concentrate the energy back into the blossoms. This is geranium. What a vibrant color. I hope you enjoyed the garden tour, folks. Happy summer, and do give this video a thumbs up, and until next time, live green and love your greens.